Well, folks, welcome. We have got Matt Wilson, the Pipe Sergeant of Field Marshal Montgomery and the Pipe Band Director at Dollar Academy. Matt has an incredible amount of titles under his belt. He's won 9 World Pipe Band Championships with Field Marshal Montgomery. He's won over 40 major championships. And Dollar Academy have won 6 World Pipe Band Championships in the juvenile grade, and they've also won the novice juvenile grade. So a massive welcome. Thank you for joining me, Matt.
Not at all. Absolute pleasure. Good to see you.
Great to see you too. How's it all going there over in Scotland during COVID?
Strange, very, very strange. But you know, we're trying to do things. We're trying to get ourselves sorted as far as, you know, obviously schools have got going back now. But yeah, we're delivering everything via electric chanters, and yeah, just having to take all the precautions that we need to. As far as the FM's concerned, you know, it's been a bit of a break. Still keeping in touch with everybody, but as of yet, we can't get any real focus on any practice as such just yet. So hopefully in the next few weeks we'll find out what if there's any studies that actually get carried out to see what is actually expelled from the instruments, and then we can take it from there and see if we can start getting into some practice routine again. Hopefully.
Fantastic. Now I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, it's been an interesting season for everybody, but I think everyone does look towards FM and everyone does look towards Dollar Academy because you guys really set the standard in your grades. You know, top end of grade 1, Field Marshal have been the most consistent band. And I shared this with your leading drummer, Keith Orr. You know, you're like the Manchester United, the All Blacks of the pipe band. We're so consistent in delivering. So whatever you guys do, I think we all follow suit. So how did you actually start your journey into piping?
Well, I come from a piping family, I suppose. My dad was pipe major of the Grade 1 Scottish Gas Band, and he spent his whole entire piping career, I suppose, in the one band, which was Wilmot and Danderhall Band. It had a couple of name changes, but then became Scottish Gas, sort of mid-80s or so. So from I was born, I was surrounded by pipe bands. I think I was on a pipe band bus going to whatever championship it was, you know, probably from a month or 2 months old, something like that. So that's always been the kind of norm for me in the summer, getting on the pipe band bus and going away with the band. And so I'd been immersed from that time. And that was just the kind of exposure that I had at the start. I didn't, however, at the start want to play the pipes. I actually wanted to play the drums.
Nice! That is awesome.
There, I've said it. It's out there.
Good.
So I never had any kind of formal lessons, but I don't know, I had this thing, I just kind of picked the sticks up and just rattled about, and even still, I would kind of pick the sticks up. I don't know, sometimes it's quite fun, even at work, if I'm sitting there with the sticks out, they know that I'm stressed because I just start hitting it off the table. So I think, yeah, my initial kind of want was to play the drums. But after I got out of that crazy phase, I ended up actually, through no pressure of Dad at all, he was always very, well, if he wants to do it, he'll do it. And I've kind of got that same thought process myself, that even as a teacher now, the kid has to want to do it. If they don't want to do it, you're not going to get the best out of them. So I think he had that in the back of his mind. And if I can remember correctly, I was probably 7 years old, where I think it was a surprise for Dad, and I kind of shown a bit of an interest. My mum took me for lessons to Tom Spears in Edinburgh, and I learnt, you know, the scale and got the grace notes, and, you know, started doing a few exercises, and probably played, I don't know, Scots with Hay or something like that. And I can remember Tom teaching me out of the old, what was called the Logan Tutor book. But I was a bit of a sensitive soul back then. And Tom was, when I look back, the experience, the opportunity I had to go to Tom, even at that age, I didn't appreciate it then. He was old school teaching, you know, and I'm not saying that he rapped your knuckles hard, but given what he'd done at the end of the chanter, I did not react to that at all. But that's the way people were taught. I didn't enjoy it. So I quit, and I didn't start again until I was about 9. So I'd had that bit of time out, but by that time there was a tutor that I went to George Watson's College as a pupil, and at that time there was a man called Neil Cameron who came over from Fife, and he was involved in Inverkeithing pipe bands, and really, really good tutor to start kids off. And my mum got talking to him in the playground, I think it was. And anyway, we ended up starting lessons through school. And I really took to it. He was a very patient person, had to be, I suppose, when you're teaching kids, probably me. But anyway, he started me off again, and I started playing a few tunes. And I was relatively quick. And because I had Dad at home as well, I'll get to that in a second. I suppose I kind of got onto the pipes within about 6 months. So I was relatively quick. But probably now that I look back on it, I did a lot by ear rather than my music reading back then was terrible. But I just picked things up by listening and watching. And I suppose that's quite an old-fashioned thing as well. But getting back to talking about having the support at home, again, I probably didn't utilise that. In fact, I didn't utilise that the way that I should have, because at the end of the day, it's your dad, and I wasn't going to listen to him. You know? So
of course, why would you?
And I feel kind of bad for that, because when I reflect on that, I think, you idiot. You know, you had this great resource at home, and you didn't really. Okay, when I got really stuck, you know, tail between the legs, right? How does this go? You know, and of course he would help, but from his point of view, he was wanting to say, right, okay, if I start saying stuff here, we're going to fall out, and it's going to be like that. So, and I've kind of witnessed that as well through my nephews, and you know, as well. It's difficult when there's that relationship and teaching. And some people do it really well. You know, look at, like I said, Murray Henderson, Faye Henderson, obviously. Now, I'm sure they had their battles at stages as well, but I just found it. I found it difficult as a kid going through that. So I played through the. We're probably going back to, I don't know, mid-90s, I suppose, at that point. And I played in the novice juvenile band at Watson's. But what Dad did do was, after he kind of got that first grounding, because of my dad's relationship with some of his friends, one of his good friends at the time was, he was Captain Stoddart at Edinburgh Castle. Later became Major Stoddart at Edinburgh Castle, and Director of Piping and Drumming at the castle. So I went to Gavin Stoddart for probably 2 years maybe, whilst the piping school was still up there. And that was possibly one of the best experiences that a young boy could do, or have, I should say. That whole experience of getting dropped off in the castle Esplanade, walking up through the drawbridge, going right up, and at that time there was the piping school was kind of towards the back of the castle, and you went up this little staircase, and when you got up the staircase, you rang the doorbell, and one of the soldiers would come and answer the door, and they knew that it'd be there for your piping lesson, so take you through. And Gavin was an absolute gentleman, fantastic player, just great teacher, and he really taught me a huge amount in that early kind of, I don't know, maybe primary 7, so at 10, 11 sort of age. And I really took to him, and I really enjoyed my lessons there. And I think it was because of that kind of special thing when you went into his room and you had all the old pictures and his pictures of him at the Glenfiddich and things like that, all the old pipers and obviously all the old pipe majors of the British Army at that point as well. There was a huge amount of history in that place, and that in itself was just such a great experience. Plus, as well, you know, he'd send some of the soldiers to go and make me hot chocolate for my during my lesson. And I was like,
now we're getting to the good stuff.
This is brilliant. So at that point, Gavin started getting quite busy. He was in, as I said, he was made major, and the piping school left Edinburgh Castle at that point. So I think I was led to believe that I was possibly, if not one of the last civilians to have tuition at the castle.
What a privilege. Before
it moved to Stewart House at Redford Barracks, where it is now. So yeah, I've always had that kind of fascination with the sort of I suppose the armed forces side of things, just through that experience, and quite a bit there. I then had a few lessons from George Lumsden in Edinburgh. So he lived not that far from school at that point. I went to George, but I was kind of going through a time then. I was probably hitting my teens, and I don't know. I kind of I still loved it, but I think I was getting lazy with it, perhaps. And I think when you draw on those experiences now as a teacher, you can kind of see yourself in some of the students as well, and you know what to say and what not to say to them to try and get them back on board. And then another very inspirational tutor for me was Brian Donaldson, and again, Brian had retired out of the army, of the Scots Guards, and at that point he'd taken over and started making pipes again at Inverness Bagpipe Makers, and again in Edinburgh. So I used to go up there after school, and he was a very different character from Gavin, and Brian was exactly what I needed at that point, because there was no two ways about it. It was, this is what you're doing, and he was very, very firm about it. And those that know Brian know that Brian has this very daunting stare, and he just looks at you and goes, "Okay, yeah, all right, okay." So that was great as well, great experience. So I used to go up to the workshop after school. Brian would be, making pipes, and there's, black wood dust everywhere and everything like that. So I'd march up and down between the lathes and things like that. And you always know, if you made a mistake, again, he'd still be, maybe hemping something. He'd have his glasses on, cigarette in the mouth, and he just looks up at you. And it's just that sinking feeling. You think, oh, no, here we go. But it's exactly what I needed at that point. I would probably been 16, 17, and I started winning quite a few prizes in the solos when I was that sort of age in the juniors. And again, I suppose I went through a wee spell where I hadn't probably pushed myself as far as I could and should have. And Brian definitely unlocked that for me. But again, I always had the support of Dad and obviously my mum as well. It took a lot of time and money for them to put me for my tuition and take me here, there, and everywhere, whether it was competitions. I should also mention at that point I'd actually left the Watson's band for a short time, and actually went to compete in grade 2 with the Drambuie Kirkliston pipe band, and the pipe major at that time was Martin Wilson. And so again, that kind of brought me on leaps and bounds, where at that time, I suppose the novice and the juvenile grades were not what they are now. And I suppose jumping forward, I think now that there's actually, it's more of an entertaining grade, or the grades are a lot more entertaining, a lot more structure around them than what there was now, which hopefully holds younger players at a higher level within their age groups. So that wasn't really available back then. So yeah, I kind of spread the wings, and I was probably playing grade 2 at around the age of 13, I suppose. Something like that. So I spent a couple of years there, learnt a lot, and but always had this desire to play with one band. And so after I'd left Drambuie, I went back to Watson's, and at that point, Ian Simpson, who's still there now, took over. And we were a novice juvenile, so that would have been, that first year was 2000 actually, and that was the first year of my kind of exam years. So in the back of my mind, I thought, right, I need to not be spending 2 nights a week going to band practices out in Kirkliston. You know, I need to work for academically. If my mum's watching this, she'll be like, yeah.
You did well, Mum. You made some good decisions.
So I went back to the Watson's band, and I think in that first season back, I mean, the band was small. I think I want to say we played in novice juvenile with something like 8 or 9 pipers. If in fact, I don't even think it was that. Probably 8 was big, but and I think we did pretty well. I think we won probably the first 3 majors or something like that. We didn't win the Worlds that year, if I can remember that. And it's amazing how you meet friends, and it was actually families become good friends that were involved in the Dumbarton band. I'm pretty sure it was Dumbarton that won the Worlds that year. So yeah, so Kirsty and Morven, it was just really, really strange how relationships developed from back then to now.
100%.
So the following year, the Watson's band, that was the first time that the band went up into juvenile again. So that would be 2001, and that was just a kind of find your feet year, I suppose. And I suppose the bands at that time that were kind of challenging, I think Dumbarton went up at the same time, so Dumbarton were there. Lochgelly High School. Boghall probably had the juvenile band at that point. The Vale might have. I've probably missed out a huge amount. But some, there's some bands that don't exist in the juvenile grades anymore. And in the following year, in 2002, Watson's won our first Worlds. That was my last year at school, and that was the first time that Watson's won the Worlds there.
Nice way to finish up.
It was great. So by that point, I kind of knew, or I was, supposing my results would have been through at that point. I was going to university in Belfast, and that was solely based on one thing and one thing only, and that was to go and join FM.
I loved it. So you knew you wanted to be an FM, so you made sure that your studies aligned with studying in Belfast. Yeah. So good.
That was the only way that I could do that at that point. Rewind back a few years, I remember being about 9 years old, and I got a tape, obviously highly illegal, being transferred from a CD onto a tape. And one of my old tutors, Neil Cameron, that I was talking about earlier, had made this, and on it was the debut album of FM. And I was like, wow, that's incredible. It was a sound that completely captured me. And I've always, even from being young, I witnessed my dad manipulate reeds, and I was just trying. It was always a kind of trial and error, even from that kind of age. I'd go through boxes and boxes of reeds, my dad go, "What have you done with these?" You know,
Love it.
all these, and I've shaved them to smithereens. But that's, you know, from the basis of, you know, looking at, well, what happens if you shave this? Well, it gets easier, right? And then you can hear. I didn't know the ins and outs of what was actually happening, but it was just the basic mechanics of that. What changes, or the kind of simple aspects of it. But I suppose before that, when I'm talking about recordings, I suppose there's lots of people would talk about the 78 Fraser Highlanders and the Live in Ballymena concert in 87, I think.
That's the one, yeah.
So that was on in the car even before I started piping at all. That would have been on in the car tape, obviously. And I think it was probably played that much that it's like no longer. You know, it was, and I knew every single track that was coming next. And, you know, I can always remember, you know, Clumsy Lover, loved that. That was just like, I wouldn't be able to play that. So I suppose back then, before I started, that was a huge influence. You know, I would, you know, there was me pretending to be Michael Gray and Bruce Gandy, and that was, I suppose, the kind of sad version that I was. Probably still am. But I suppose then when I heard the debut album, that just completely triggered it for me, and that was the first time. And I suppose when I spoke to my dad to say, look, you know, what's this band? He's like, okay, band from Northern Ireland. My mum being from Belfast, kind of every holiday that we would go over back to Belfast, I could remember we went to, I want to say it was like a local contest at Banbridge, and my mum went up to who was the bass drummer back then, John McFetridge.
Yeah.
And John, the absolute star of man. But I remember I must have been 9 or 10 or something like that. And it must have been the week before a championship. And so the FM were playing at Banbridge. Mum went up and said, look, my son's just, could you even tell me where you practice? Would be able to even just come for practice? No problem. You come. It's in Lisburn. We're Hill Hall on a Tuesday, and I think they were practicing in a Lisburn Leisure Centre at that time, on a Friday, I think it was. So on the Friday, went to the Leisure Centre, and I just stood there in complete awe. So I reckon maybe about 97 or roughly about that kind of time. Might have even been, yeah, I suppose maybe around that sort of time. And I remember just standing there watching these guys and being in the practice room. Blew my mind, absolutely blew my mind. So I've always had that kind of following of the band. I mean, yeah, pipe band geek really, and I followed them. But the sound and the music that the band were playing, I just wanted to do it. So fast forward, I know I'm kind of jumping about here. Fast forward a few years, I wanted to play the band. I'd made contact with Richard, told him what my plans were as far as moving to Belfast to go to university. And so I'd been sent all the music, and at that time they were just preparing for doing the Unplugged concert. And so he sent me the full booklet through. So through in the post came, I don't know, like a packet like that thick. You know, you look at it now.
Right?
So every set and a tape. So, and by this point, so we're what, 2000 and yeah, it would have been 2002 at that point. There I am, and all I've got is a CD player at this point. So
upgrade.
Didn't have a tape deck. I had to go into my mum and dad's car to listen to the tape. So switch the engine on, put the tape on, and sit with the music all over the dashboard and everything like that. And that's when I learned the full concert. So when I went to the concert that year, I knew the majority of it. So it must be September I moved over, and remember I just said, well, get yourself settled and then come for your audition. And so went to the house. He picked me up from university, brought me out to the house. And I can remember Ruth had made really spicy curry. Sweat was dripping off me before you even sounded a note. So did the audition, and nerve-wracking doesn't even begin to explain it. But luckily, he gave me the chance back then. And I suppose at that point, because the band was structured, majority of people were all in Northern Ireland at that stage. They had a few fly-in players. I wasn't good enough to be a fly-in player. You know, the two guys from Scotland at that point were Scott Drummond and Graham Roy that flew over. They both won silver medals. They both played in Grade 1, both won major championships. You know, they were great players. And at that point, I was also a couple of English guys, Guy Rylett and Ryan Lascelles, that came over. They, I think, played in the RUC band under Tony Sloan, maybe a couple of years before that as well. So they were flying in too. But they had that experience, and I was a bit wet behind the ears, and I probably thought I was a lot better than I actually was. Yeah, and I'll back that statement up, because when you then stand in that band hall, there's nowhere to hide, you know. And I sat out for the first half of that first season in 2003 because I didn't quite appreciate where I needed to be. And I think that's probably made me hungrier for it at that stage, because I had to work really, really hard on everything, you know, technique, the instrument, blowing, and I worked like tirelessly to the point where, you know, I was just probably overdoing it. But I had that determination, and I suppose that probably be people back home that I'd heard whispers of saying, he'll never get a game there, he'll not make it. That's probably the wrong thing to say to me. That's my kind of character. It's just, well, is that right? Okay, I'll show you.
Prove you wrong.
So, and thankfully, 18 years later, it paid off. And that's not to say that I didn't continue to work hard. Everyone has to work hard at that level, regardless of whether it's FM, Inveraray, St Lawrence, Shotts. Doesn't matter. Everybody has to work really hard to compete. So it's not just an individual thing, but from my own personal experience, I had to really get the finger out.
That's incredible. And you shared a lot in your story that I'd never heard before. So thank you for doing that. And I'm sure everyone that's watching will really appreciate that. And to be 18 years later, to be standing there as the pipe sergeant, well, it speaks volumes about your dedication and commitment.
Hopefully. Either that or there was no one else to pick.
Well, there's that too. I love it. Now, I wanted to chat to you about Dollar, because Dollar is a very, very special school in terms of what you guys have produced with piping and drumming. And certainly, I worked at St Andrews College in Christchurch, New Zealand for 14 years. And when we were coming over to the Worlds, there was two bands in our mind that we'd always be focusing on in the juvenile grade. That would be Dollar Academy and George Watson's College. Now, I know there's lots more in the mix there now at a very high level, but you guys were always standouts and the most consistent. So I've always admired what you've done. You've got an incredible team there. So I'd just love to ask, like, is there something about the culture? Tell me a little bit about the culture of the school pipe band that makes it so conducive to amazing results over, I know, a massive decade.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for very kind comments. It's always really nice to hear, especially when you were involved in that whole process within juvenile and bringing Stack over. I suppose, yes, our team is very, very strong, and everybody brings a lot to the whole program. So it's a very good blend of people. And obviously, well, to go back, our master in charge of the band's a guy called Craig Stewart. And Craig has been there, he was an FP himself, and he's been there a long time, running the department, you know, from probably mid-90s, I think. I can't put an exact date on it. But what Craig has managed to do is help build a team. And again, that has grown significantly across the years, from his inception of it. So what has happened is that now he allows, even though Craig will still teach a couple of days a week, Craig's got a great way with them, with some of the younger kids, and doing the basics really, really well. Very, very meticulous. And then that allows him to carry on. He has other roles within the school as well. So what he does is he basically manages and takes the workload away from us so that we don't have to worry about things like the kind of budgeting. You know, he's very good. If we need something, we go to him, and he can, you know, obviously see, obviously current climate, budgets are not great, but yeah. It's the world over. But what he does allows us to hopefully do what we do best, and that's teach the kids and get the various bands performing to the levels that they've been at for the past number of years. So that takes a lot of pressure off of us. We don't have to really worry about the admin side of things. Now, you know, there's times that I feel, you know, look, Craig, is there anything we can do to help that? But, you know, he's fantastic with that and taking that bit of pressure off us. So that works in that sense from his perspective. As myself, I've been there obviously now over 10 years. Callum Beaumont is our other piping instructor who works 4 days a week. And he has been there now, I want to say maybe 6 years potentially. And before Callum, Kyle Warren was tutor there. So that was like the second tutor to me that was brought in. Because what we recognised at that point was that we needed to expand the programme. So when I took over, there wasn't the amount of kids, even though it was good. I thought to make this work and have a clearer pathway, we're going to have to introduce a novice juvenile band, a competitive novice juvenile band. Because what was happening is you had your learners, you had them in a band. We had a kind of B band that never really competed at anything. You were trying to take them out of having not experienced any competition at all, straight into the juvenile band, which had just won its first world. So I'd taken over in 2009, April time, and we took played one major that year. So I'd always said to them when I went, I had a kind of 3 to 4 year plan that I was going to have a band that was good enough to challenge for the Worlds.
Love it.
And I was really, really over the moon that we managed to do that in our first full season the following year.
That's incredible. Well done. Like, to do that in 1 year, that's unbelievable.
So there was things that I knew that I could do that would make it instantly better. I knew I could work with sound. I knew that I could put together a musical medley and a well-structured Marshal Spain reel that the kids could handle, but it was going to capture people, hopefully. And I think that's where you get away with certain things in the juvenile grade, that you can actually use a lot of music and a lot of things, especially back then. I don't want to say that you ripped it off the grade 1 bands, but in a way, you kind of did, because you had that scope to do that. because the kids are listening to that and they go, I really like that tune. And they go, right, okay, well, let's try it. And that's one way of just capturing them. If they see it being played at that level and they realise that they can do it, okay, they're probably not playing it quite as well, but at least that gives them something to hang on to.
Motivates them, right?
Yeah. So I suppose then you had, again, our drum instructor, Lee Innes, at that point, he had been there for a long time. Again, from the 90s, he would be playing in Dizer, and he had that knowledge of playing in the juvenile levels as a younger player through Lochela High School, and then his development through into Dizer. So he understood that whole concept of the juvenile and novice juvenile platform. So Lee's still there today. But as I said, as things developed, we needed to obviously get more drumming instruction into the school as well. And then Stephen McWhirter was appointed as the second drumming instructor. So for us, it's always been about, if you want to try and get the best out of the kids, then you bring the best in to teach them. So, and I always stand by that. We then had, for a few years, we brought Scott Curry in to teach our bass section from probably around 2000, I would say 2011 maybe, around that time. I need to double check that. So Scott was there for a couple of years, and then Louisa Gaitis took over after Scott had left, and Louisa is still with us. So there was obviously, through that period, we recognised that there was a huge amount happening in the bass and tenor section that we needed to address, and I think that probably you could speak about that globally, not just to the juvenile grades. It took a big transformation over the 2000s. So essentially that's where we're at today.
And so who's who of players and performers and teachers that you've got working there? It's simply amazing.
Well, hopefully, but the thing is, you need to get the blend right as well, as that you can have some amazing players, but they don't necessarily make the best teachers, and that also you need to weigh that up too. And that's hopefully, fingers crossed, we've got the correct blend there, and that for me is really, really important. And let's face it, I'm never going to be the best piper in the world, but hopefully what I do have is the right skill and knowledge behind it to help kids develop and do it in a way that they respond to. And I think that's key. If you get the kids on side, then you're halfway there, I believe.
100%, and you're doing an incredible job with that. So once a kid walks through the door, what does that look like for them? So in terms of, do you have like a structured program, and would it have taken a year or a couple of years to get on pipes? How does that look?
Again, as you know, every kid develops in different stages. You could normally, I could see a kid come through and put a chanter in their hand at the first stage and go, he's going to be okay, or she's going to be great. Then you get your surprises as well. There's the odd one that comes in, the chanter's upside down after the third lesson. But then something clicks with them. Now, for me, because we've been successful at Dollar, sometimes I think that there's this perception that, well, they can make anybody into a piper or drummer. That's not the case. Yes, we will do everything that we can to get them. For us, our ambition is to always make every child as good as they possibly can be, as good as they can be, is the key. Because there'll be some kids that end up coming to us, Mr. Wilson, I don't actually want to play in the band. I just really enjoy my lessons, and I want to. And I think they know themselves as they get a bit older. They think, I'm not going to make it to juvenile band. But what we've got to remember is that the standard of our novice juvenile band, novice A band now, is probably better than what the juvenile band that I played in at Watson's when I won the Worlds in juvenile.
Yeah.
And the whole thing has moved on dramatically, you know, and I could quite happily say that for the novice A band at Watson's is better than that band was then. So that's there's been a huge shift in everything that we do, and we know that, but a lot of other people probably don't recognise that quite as quickly. So, as far as the whole progress from start to finish, you know, the very earliest that we would take any kids are primary 3. Now, primary 3 would be the age of 7, roughly. Now, again, that would be on a rare instance. Majority of the time, it would be P4 would be kind of ideal starting time. The reason why we've gone down some P3 route is because there's some of them are more advanced, where they can hold their attention a bit better. Size of their hands as well, that's a huge thing. You know, holding a set of drumsticks, holding a chanter, okay, you can get smaller chanters and whatnot, but it's a lot for them to take in at a young age. So we start them all off the same way. I suppose for us it's about getting them comfortable in the environment in the first place. So when we bring them for the first lesson, we give them a little tour of our department. It's not a huge building, but to them it'll be quite daunting, I would imagine. Yeah. So we show them round the most important place, the toilet.
Absolutely.
So show them around and introduce them to all the other staff. You know, if it's, say, a Thursday when everybody's in, they'll get to see where everybody is and what everybody teaches.
That's great.
And it's just getting them to feel comfortable, so that if for the odd time that, I don't know, I'm maybe away up to the primary school to collect someone else, or I might not be at my desk, they know that they can go to Mr. Bowman's room or Mr. Dennis's room, Mr. Stewart's, whoever, to get, where's Mr. Wilson, do you know? Or I might be in there with them, you know. So they have that kind of comfort knowing that that's their space as well. And I think that's really important because, as you well know, those kids spend a lot of time in that department throughout their school career. And I suppose it probably becomes a second home to them as they get older.
Definitely.
And it happens with us, you know, it's like, all right, guys, you've got nowhere else to go right now. Go give me 5 minutes. So, and that's a nice thing. That's actually quite a nice position to be in, because if you have kids that actually want to be in your company as well, then I suppose there's something that must be right there. So we'll start them all off. Obviously, drummers go through the initial holding of their sticks, pipers, they're holding the chanter, doing their scales, grace notes, go through the whole process and build up into their tunes. So, you know, we 4/4s and 2/4s, 3/4s, 6/8s, whatever. So we've got kind of standard sets that have never really changed. And I suppose, you know, if parents have like more than 2 kids that go through the program, they're like, oh, there's Bonnie Galloway again. You know, so it's I suppose it does get tedious at times, but what you got to remember is that if you've got these tunes there, and if you keep changing them, it just doesn't mean that your learners are changing. It goes right through. So you kind of have to have some standardization, and then you know your kind of tune choice then changes as they go through and play in the bands and compete with it. That's where it probably matters the most.
And with your top band,
So
your juvenile band, do you guys change the music in your juvenile band often?
try to. I mean, there'll probably be people watching this and going, I've heard the same tunes for however long. There's times that you go through and you think, right, okay, well, that tune works for us. And then you maybe leave it for a few years and then you bring it back. And we've done that probably with John McDonald, Glencoe. We played that for the first time probably back in, I don't know, 2014-ish time. And then we changed to something else. And then I changed again and I revisited and I thought, we actually played that quite well. I'm going to try that again. But even though you do that, you do feel like you've been playing it for quite a long period of time. So I do try to juggle as many things. What I do try and do is maybe introduce it a wee bit earlier so that I kind of test to see how the kids react with certain tunes. And there's lots of tunes that I've given out and quite quickly gone, no, that's not going to work. And that's what I've learned as well with, I suppose, I need to be very definite in my decision before I give things through to either Lee or Stephen to go, right, get a score for that. And then 2 weeks later, I'll see that score. Don't worry about it.
As a drummer, I've been there and it's incredibly frustrating for sure.
I know, and I think that's probably where my, I suppose I've learned a few things just to be a bit more decisive and try it out first before you roll it out across the whole department, because then obviously poor Louise has to be at the end of that and wait for the drum score to be written, and then she'll add in her bass and tenor beats as well. So yeah, it's a lot, I suppose, rides on how decisive I am.
100%. I'll have to say though, Matt, what you've done with your music, when I hear the band play, you've got a sound, and you talked about when you were younger looking at FM, you heard a sound that you liked. When I hear Dollar play in the juvenile grade, I know that it's Dollar, and you've got a really beautiful ensemble sound. The instruments sound incredible, but the music that you and Stephen create, the snare settings and that he writes, really amazing. And maybe I'm biased because I grew up very close to Stephen, and we played in the piping and drumming school together. Then we enjoyed a lot of time in SFU together. Maybe I'm biased and I like what he does, but I really think the ensemble you guys have is world class. And I know it's juvenile grade, but I would just say it was world class across all grades, what you do.
Well, thank you. I think there's a lot of what both Lee and Stephen, I think that's where it works as well, is that they work very well together and look at all scores together, whether it's for the juvenile or the novice juvenile. And again, like what myself and Callum would do is we sit down and it could be a passing comment. It could be, what about this tune? Or what's happened, I've seen the past couple of years, it's a bit freaky actually. There's tunes that even like during lockdown, I was thinking about getting a couple of big 4-parted jigs, but just a couple of jigs to put together into a wee set, just to something fresh for the guys to learn. And the 2 jigs that I mentioned were the 2 that he was thinking about. Now, out of thousands of jigs,
that's unbelievable.
It was those 2. I thought, well, okay, that's meant to be that those 2 jigs will be learned anyway.
100%.
But there's, I think both of us are quite similar in many ways with our thoughts on music, which does help. And I suppose my kind of outlook on music, I've learned a lot from Callum, and through that, and obviously unbelievable player, and just being able to pick up on wee bits of expression that I might not have thought of before. And I think if you can admit that as well, that you learn from other people within your department, not just your department. Yeah, it can be anywhere. I mean, I think gaining knowledge from other areas is crucial in any walk of life. I think if you go down a route that you just think that it's your way or no way, then yeah, you might be successful, but there'll become a point where things in whether the workplace or industry changes, and you need to develop and adapt to what changes. So as far as the kind of the ensemble side of things, I probably go back to my kind of dabbling in drumming, shall we say. I know what I want to hear, and even this week, because we've kind of been preparing, we're back at school, like a part ending for a march, I kind of had this thing in the back of my head. Now, even though I wouldn't be able to play the exact rudiments to fit that, I know what it is that I want, and Lee's very good at that and very receptive to a piper like me. just tap it out a wee bit, or whatever it is that I think that I want to hear from that section of music.
That's brilliant.
And I do feel sorry because obviously being in juvenile, your lead drummer has to be a pupil, and I do feel sorry for some of them at times, because I'm just like, give it a break, come on, get a break.
So good.
Again, or get a new bass drummer, and you just see the fear in their eyes, and you're like, oh no.
Starting from scratch again.
But yeah, I think I have a clear sort of mindset as to what I'm looking for. I've been very, very lucky and fortunate to have played in one of the best ensembles in the world, so that is kind of instilled in me. The whole sound thing, there's nobody else that anybody could learn from better than Richard to, manipulate sound and create a sound. You look at guys that have even left the band that have gone on to do really well with the knowledge that they gained through the band.
Absolutely.
And that's down to one person. And I've got to mention one person that, and I feel quite emotional about that, is Big Frank Andrews. Frank was a huge inspiration to me in a very quiet way as well, where he would come up to me and he'd ask me, those drones sound okay? I'm like, Frank, you're asking me, you're the drone guru, it's like,
yeah.
But he was one of the nicest men, very, very supportive, and very, very supportive of what we did at Dollar. And huge miss. So I had to mention the big man.
Absolutely. Yeah, he's a very incredible human, and what he was able to do to support piping and drumming and to help Field Marshal create that sound is just phenomenal.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'm sure there'll be people out there thinking, hey, how does Matt and Stephen and Lee and all these guys, how do they run a practice? So if I was to rock up and be a student, what would a typical band practice look like at Dollar Academy?
Hopefully you've got lots of sweets, chocolate, cake.
All the bribery.
Absolutely. So practices. So because of the program that we have, we've got different practice times, and as a school, we want kids to get involved in as many things as they possibly can. Like Dollar Academy, having worked there and a parent there, it's fantastic. I think it's a really, really great school. I enjoy working there immensely, and we essentially structure our practices around the kids to be able to do those other activities. So it's a big rugby school, it's a big hockey school, but there's lots and lots of other activities that the kids get involved in. So, for instance, our whole kind of practice week. So terms 1 and 2, so we go back in August, so first term August to Christmas. second term January through to Easter time, and then term 3 from summer term, so depending when Easter falls, April through to June. Terms 1 and 2 take a very similar structure. So we would hold our juvenile practices on a Wednesday evening. We would run from 5:30 to 7:30. Now what that allows is for the guys that have got hockey and rugby on those days, they can go and do their sport, time to get changed, washed and whatnot, and back up to the piping hut for the practice to start. So it's important that we allow that to happen. Yes, we need to go out of our way, because essentially you're not finishing your work to 7:30 and the rest of the school's way home. But that's what we do. Other practices, and it also has to, because of other instructors that we've got to obviously have practices on the days that they're in school, so we just have to manipulate that as best we can. So we started doing, for the novice guys, a lot of morning practices, even in the first 2 terms, that just allow that to have a space before school. So if it was a novice A practice, for example, they would practice on a Wednesday and Thursday morning, start at 8 and be finished 8:45. Now, we're talking the first 2 terms. Third term, would have the guys in most mornings, because usually, when I say that, it is Scotland, and yeah, the weather can be a bit edgy.
Absolutely.
But 9 out of 10 times, at that time in the morning, the weather isn't that bad. If it is, we can have a practice inside, but we try and get out as much as we can. But we would run without going overboard. We would still have, for the juvenile guys, 1 practice after school anyway in the third term, because things kind of shift about, and we would have some morning practices, but I break it up so that, you know, it's not every day. I think if you go overboard, then people get tired very quickly. It's going to be a long season that summer term anyway. But what we do find is that when our pipers and drummers are getting up and being active at that time in the morning, it actually helps. And it's funny, I've looked into some studies in this as well. One, they're getting themselves organised earlier, they're being active and being productive earlier, and they're involving themselves in the musical instrument. All apparently contribute to better intake of knowledge and better exam preparation, things like that. So, you know, it's hopefully we're kind of doing a bit for the wider academic side of school as well. So
I think the early morning stuff is so important as well, Matt. So I'm a big believer in you do your best work in the morning before you start to get distracted.
Yeah.
And, you know, certainly if pipers and drummers who are watching this, that's probably one thing I would suggest is if you can do your practice, your personal practice in the morning, best time to do it.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. Absolutely. We do get better output of the kids at that time than we would after school.
Yeah.
100%.
They're knackered.
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, especially with what I've just said as well, you know, if they've been playing hockey and rugby in the rain, they come up and they're in the wrong mindset to say, right, okay, let's go for this. So, but that's just the nature of the beast as well. Most band practices, you know, are night time anyway, you know, regardless of whether it's a school or, you know, an adult band. It doesn't normally change, but it is something that we have the privilege of being able to do.
Absolutely. And the one thing I think that a lot of youngsters who are maybe watching this, or there might be some parents of youngsters watching this. So a lot of people will look to your program and look at the success, incredible success of the program. They'll also look at the tutors, some of the world's best tutors in piping and drumming. And they'll think, hey, I kind of wish I could do that. But, oh, that's in Scotland and I maybe don't live in Scotland. Or, oh, you know, I don't get to go to a chance to go to that school. Do you guys have any international students that play in the band? And is it possible for pipers and drummers to come to Dollar to do that?
Absolutely, yes. We over the past number of years, we've always attracted, when I say locally, I mean within Scotland, we've attracted potential pupils to the school through pipes and drums. And I'm pretty sure there'll be, lots of other schools that would do the same. But I suppose there's a bit of pride that goes with that as well. If somebody wants to come to the school, and one of their main focuses is pipes and drums, that's an incredible feeling. It really is. And yes, we have over the past brought, there's been, I can think of some of our past pupils from the Isle of Barra, the Isle of Arran, Oban, up in Roybridge, couple of our more famous or infamous pipers, the Cameron brothers, who've travelled now. Dollar offer the full package. I mean, it's a great school. It won international independent school of the year a couple of years ago.
Wow.
It's, as far as exam results go, it's very, very, very good. And I've worked there for a long time. I see the structure of the school. I see what it delivers and what it offers for their kids. And it really is impressive. Really nice place to be. The actual setting of the school itself is beautiful. It's a lovely place, and we're fortunate. I live in the village itself.
Fantastic.
Village, town. There's a wee debate over that, but anyway,
it's a beautiful spot.
It is great, and it lends itself to the pipes and drums. It's one of those things that people always talk about, having lived here or been a pupil here, that one of the things is hearing the pipe band out in the mornings, when they're coming to school, and to be part of that memory is actually quite special as well. But yes, that has now developed into international students as well, and we've got two that arrived with us last year, one from Seattle and one from Colorado, and again wanted to just be part of what we do, and we're absolutely delighted to have them. They board with us full time, and it's lovely to have different characters come from all around the world to be part of your program. And I'm not saying for 1 second it was easy for them, because they had to learn our ways, and it was very, there was a lot, first and foremost, a lot of music to learn for them coming into the band. And the one good thing, I suppose, about the band, and something that I'm very, very adamant on, is the inclusion of everybody within that group. We're working with kids in the juvenile band, and again, it doesn't matter. Age is not an issue. If you're good enough, you're old enough, and that's the bottom line. There's no point that I say, oh no, you can't be in the band until you're in such and such a year. Our school pipe major from last year, Andrew Ferguson, I think he played in his first year in the juvenile band when he was primary 7.
Wow.
So 10, 11, probably 11 years old.
Amazing.
So that for me doesn't that's not a barrier at all. So that the door is very much open for any age. If you're got the right work ethic and you've got the talent to do it, great. And again, what we've got to remember is that the standards have pushed up quite dramatically, even over that time, that we're now fortunate that we have that novice at a really good level at the novice A category that keeps kids being pushed and pushed. And Callum's very, very good with that group of kids to allow them to really push on through and then essentially make it easier for me as well by the time. So we've just done a kind of bit of a handover for this term, who will be trying out for the juvenile band. So, we kind of swap back and forth. There's kids that I'll start off and then I'll put to Callum, and then Callum will transfer them onto me, and
that's great.
It works well. But yes, as far as our two chaps from North America, great kids. Hopefully will gain the best experience that they can through piping, and well, both pipers, but obviously drummers as well. For piping and drumming, they'll get great tuition. They'll get really good experiences from the group as a whole, and hopefully make friends for life. I even look at some of our FPs now. I mentioned the Cameron brothers. So there's Sandy Cameron, who plays in field marshal with myself now, and I was round. He's studying, I think. He just graduated from Glasgow University, and his flatmate was another FP who boarded with him at Dollar, who was a great piper as well, Cameron Bennett, and it's just lovely to see these relationships that form at school and through what essentially we do, that have gone on to blossom and the sharing flats and the whether out partying or whatever, probably great. Just jealous that I'm not part of that. But it's really, really nice to see. It's great to see, and hopefully with our two guys that have come over, I think they'll strike up they already have a good friendship, but hopefully see that develop in years to come as well.
100%.
But yeah, so Hugo and Duncan are both over.
What a special opportunity for those two kids. It's amazing. And if there's any parents watching this, or if there's any kids that are getting excited, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you to start that conversation?
Okay, well, probably the best thing to do is get in touch with the school itself. And you can put it for the attention of myself. But the best way to do that is actually rector@dollaracademy.org.uk. And if there's anybody interested, just brief outline of obviously what you're interested in doing, whether it's pipes, drums, or even indeed if you just want to come to the school, and fine. But make the contact. We're in the process of finalising a digital open day, obviously because of just now. So that'll be available probably on the website next weekend. So I think maybe the Saturday the 5th. But go onto the website. Lots of information there anyway on the Dollar Academy website.
Brilliant. I'll pop that in below. I'll make sure in the description below for anybody that's watching. I'll put in Dollar's details. And just if you want to hit subscribe as you're doing that, guys, hit the subscribe button. But I'll put all the details to get in touch with Dollar Academy and to make sure that you do it to the rector, but attention for Matt. That'll be awesome. So I just want to say a massive, massive thank you for sharing that. And that's the one thing I really admire in our piping and drumming world, that people are very open to sharing their knowledge. And I think there's certain other hobbies where there's like a secret society. They want to keep all their secrets, but this is not the case. And I think, you're one of the world's best at what you do in FM and also at Dollar Academy. So what you've shared today is just phenomenal. And I'm sure there'll be people that have more questions for you. So if they do, can they connect with you on social media? What's the best way if they want to just kind of connect?
Yeah, absolutely. either on Facebook, catch me there, or if you're already a friend, just send me a message. It's not a problem. So, yeah, and more than happy. I think from my point of view, I'm always happy to help anybody. You know, that's regardless of what stage people are at in their piping or pipe bands themselves. You know, always happy to help. And on that note about help, and I just wanted to share a little story about you from a few years ago. So as you know, my nephew Harris played with Canterbury for the Worlds in 2015.
I think it was 2015 or 2016.
So obviously he was with the band, and my younger nephew Dougal was learning to play snare drum at that point. Now I had left. So for those that don't know, Glasgow Green setup, FM based themselves down at there's a wee boathouse just beside the Clyde, and I think Richard had said, right, okay, go and stretch your legs or whatever, be back here in half an hour. So I took a wander down, and then there was the kind of alleyway that takes you up into the green itself, and I had to take a double take. So there you are with your drum corps, the day of the World Championship finals, I think, right? With my nephew at age 11 or something, if that, probably wasn't even that, playing 3/4s. So you had your corps warming up. And that was one of the best things I have ever seen, that you took the time to actually include that little boy to play a set of 3/4s with your spare drum on. I thought, that's just brilliant. So I don't think I ever got to say thank you for that, but that was a moment that even stuck with me. And it just shows you that sometimes, even just for anybody that is watching this, it's a little gesture that just inspires kids to take that next step. So, you know, if any advice that I can give you is be thoughtful of the youth and just think about what it is that might just inspire them to do that little bit extra. So thank you very much.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, that brings back great memories. I can remember the whole drum corps. They were up for it. They were super excited, and he was just, you know, half the size he is now probably, but that was a memory I won't forget either. And I remember as a kid, just some people doing special things like that for me. And I think if as leaders, if we can do little things, I'm sure yourself and Stephen and Lee do things like that too. So it's my pleasure. Make sure and tell him I say hello when you see him.
I will do.
Hey, well, you have an amazing weekend. I wanted to say thanks again for coming online.
Not at all. Listen, thanks very much for having me, and we'll catch up soon.
Cheers, Matt. I look forward to it.